exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Nothing like a good old poltergeist to set your teeth a chattering and your knees a knocking and your book sales to go sky high, right?
That's right.
Well,
That's
good.
right.
Hey, how you there in Jasper, Indiana, Tim Schwartz? How you doing?
Well, we're doing good, and so far, poltergeist free. And we intend to keep it that way.
Well, this has been a big week for our little publishing concern, and poltergeists and ghoulies and things that go bump all over the damn place, let me tell you. And, I'm here in Atlantic City. Don't gamble. Don't do too much drinking anymore, although I certainly would like to if my health would tolerate it. But I'm here with my associate and fellow um, paranormal researcher, and of course, one of our best-selling authors, Maria DeAndrea. We came down for a couple of days. I was going to say to get a little bit of sunshine, but it's been so bleak. It's like you were standing there at the entrance of the Hollow Earth or something like that. I mean, just really, really gray and overcast. Not freezing, though. No snow on the ground. And like I say, we don't gamble, but we do eat a lot. And so we've had we've had a good time. And I take my work down and do a little proofreading and a little editing and getting it ready to release a book that we've been working on. Tim, you've helped us on this, and it's almost ready to go. It should be on Amazon actually in a couple of days. The title of which is Amityville and Beyond. And this has got to be the strangest book ever written on poltergeist and the paranormal, with the assistance of not only you and Maria, of course, but with our colleague and friend Paul Eno, who has revealed some of his investigative techniques and some of his findings. Now, Tim, synchronicities follow me around like the plague. No matter where I go or no matter what I do, there's just something unusual that's happening around me that can't be explained. Let me tell you about the latest incident that happened yesterday, in fact.
Oh, yeah, I want to hear that.
Yeah. We were on the bus coming in from New York, Maria and I, looking out the window, and it's about a 3-hour ride from Manhattan. And you want to pour me a cup too while you're at it? And we were coming in on the bus, and we're looking out the window. We only got another, a block or two to go before we pull into the parking spot of the Tropicana Hotel where we were staying. And up on the roof of one of the smaller bed and breakfasts is what would you call it? A sculpture? I don't know whether it's made out of iron or what exactly, but it's up on the roof. Statues of the Blues Brothers. And, Elwood Babbitt and, of course, Dan Aykroyd, and John Belushi there. And, okay, so we always see that as we come in, and we always probably make some comment about Ghostbusters. And I mentioned to Maria that Dan Aykroyd grew up in a family that believed very much in the paranormal. In fact, they had seances in his house in Canada. He's Canadian. And his father ran a spiritualist circle. And so he was prone to believe these things, and said he, realized that there was probably more to the phenomena and to uh, the paranormal. And of course, he's been a sponsor of the Mutual UFO Network, and even claims to have had an encounter with the Men in Black while he was talking to Britney Spears on the phone. Don't ask me to explain that. I've never understood that, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so we're passing by, and we finally pull into the parking the space there for the bus. And when you get off the bus, you're met by somebody from the hotel who gives you a coupon that's good for like $25 that you can spend on a slot machine. Well, we don't gamble. Once we lose their $25, we go about our business. Okay, but in order to get the coupon validated, they have to put it on your membership card. So we go inside the door, and there's a row of cages or cashiers, and they take the coupon and they put it on your card, the whatever the complimentary amount is. And as Maria and I are standing in line, there's music playing, just random music like coming out of the speakers in the ceiling or whatever. Just as
Like
we get in the
music.
line, music, yeah, like you would hear on an elevator, except it's
Mm.
in the lobby of the hotel. As we get online to get our card validated, what do they start playing? And I say they. I don't know who they are because there's nobody. Like you say, Tim, it's not programmed by the hotel. It's probably some service that they subscribe to, and it's a random pick by technology or something. What do they start playing but the theme to Ghostbusters? Now, out of 50 million other songs that this tape on the loop could play, why does it pick Ghostbusters? I mean, that is beyond coincidence. It is beyond even synchronicity. And this happens to me almost all the time on a regular basis. I mean, things you can't, and people say, oh, Carl Jung and this and that. It has nothing to do with Carl Jung whatsoever. There is some kind of intelligence behind this. It can't be explained in rational terms because it's not. Well, now Philip K. Dick, if you remember, Tim, he talked about the. He was one of the first to talk about the Matrix and
Yes.
the fact that we might be part of a computer simulation. And at first, that sounds pretty crazy. In fact, there's a clip that we've used on a previous show when we've had Tessa Dick on, who was his fifth wife, that was done at a science fiction convention in France, where he reveals for the first time some of his encounters with this intelligence. And they show reaction shots from the audience, and they are looking at him like he is absolutely crazy. Well, that's the thing about science fiction people. They have no uh, they have no sense of what's the word that I'm looking for? No sense of like excitement in their life. Everything has to be kind of just like they're in front of them, and has to be validated. It's not like even though they talk about teleportation and all these other things, they don't really believe in any of it. So why bother? But me, I'm convinced, like I say, that I think that there's some intelligence behind that. This music just didn't come on for no reason. So just to make finish up on the story, Maria and I were talking about this. We said, well, these things happen all the time. Is there a message here? Here we are in Atlantic City, a big a place to come and gamble and to win and probably lose money. So what do we do? Well, I came up with the ingenious idea of looking for slot machines that had Ghostbusters on it. I said,
Okay.
if we're going to win, let's find a Ghostbuster machine and take that complimentary money that we got from the hotel and spend our $25 in that machine. Well, we looked it up, and sure enough, the hotel does was listed as having Ghostbusters slot machines. Unfortunately, they apparently were taken. They apparently were taken out of the hotel several months ago. Nobody knows exactly why or where. So we ended up at some other petty slot machine, and I think I won. I think I won 15 cents. And Maria said she won enough to buy a battery for her watch. So there's our Ghostbusters synchronicity story. Who are you gonna call exploring the bizarre? That's what
What?
I say.
Well, I don't know. That sounds almost like kind of like a cosmic tease, almost to get you all
Well,
worked,
that
well,
that
worked
okay. That
up, and
yeah. That's what that's what these things are. There's never any rhyme or reason. It doesn't go any further. I mean, you would think that, hey, here's the opportunity to show them that they're behind us all the way. Drop a couple of thousand, out the slot machine for us. No, we even lose the free $25 comp that we got. So there you go, Ghostbusters. Well, we love you, but it ain't working for us. Anyway, Tim, um, tell everybody who our guests are this evening, because we're going to be talking about poltergeists and ghosts and ghoulies and synchronicities and some of the weirdest stuff you've ever heard.
things that go moan in the night, maybe. Yeah.
Oh, that's my stomach, babe. That's my stomach.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I'm really excited because tonight we have with us William J. Hall and Steve Mera. Now, both gentlemen have been on our show before, but not together. So it's just really fantastic that we have these two, just absolutely, excellent people with us. Now, Bill Hall, he's the author of The World's Most Haunted House, and also Living in Ghost Central, Diaries from a Very Haunted House, The Haunted House Diaries, the true story of a quiet Connecticut town in the center of a paranormal mystery, and the Bridgeport Poltergeist, true tales of a haunted house. And Bill was born and raised in Bridgeport, and as well, he is a professionally equipped to recognize trickery because for more than 25 years as a performing magician, he knows how to create and recognize illusions. So it's just fantastic that he's with us here tonight. And of course, Steve, who was kind enough to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be with us. Thank you for that, Steve. Steve is over there in England. And, he became interested in UFOs and the paranormal, like the rest of us, at a very early age. And he's had, 30 years of high-level experience, in 34 now, wow, in investigating these things. And he specializes in working with private companies and major public bodies, including the Ministry of Defense, investigating anomalous disturbances like what we'll be talking about tonight. He's also the author of Strange Happenings, Paranormal Insight, The Rockdale Poltergeist, along with Jenny Ashford, and House of Fire and Whispers, which I hope we have time to talk about tonight, because I think the last time that you were on, Stephen, you were actually in the process of investigating
Yes.
this case, and as well as the Paranormal Investigators Handbook. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for.
Hey, Tim. Let's not forget to mention his greatest accomplishment of all is being the editor and publisher of Phenomena magazine.
That's right.
Where we contribute material on a regular basis, and it's an e-magazine. It's available for free on the internet, and it's the layout is fabulous. It's all in color, and it will keep you satisfied for hours at a time, and can be best read on a tablet, as far as I'm concerned. I'm throwing my laptop out and just using my my tablets. I'm now up to 5 tablets.
Wow.
And one of them I use just to One of them I use just to read Phenomena magazine. So, welcome, gentlemen, to the show.
Yes.
In fact, Steve, I wanted to kind of start out with you. How in God's name and why did you decide to start a magazine? It's a heck of a lot of work, and I know because I've edited over 30 magazines over the years. Everything from UFO Universe that lasted 11 years. It was sold on the newsstand, to magazines like Moped Action. I did a soap opera magazine. I did a magazine called Pro Quarterback without ever having seen a football game in my life. And so I'm very knowledgeable about the process of putting together a magazine, especially a monthly one. How did that all come about?
Well, as you can imagine, it's a very demanding thing to do. I do have a number of editors now because we're distributed into 12 countries. We have a standalone Spanish one, which is created in Spanish for the community, and I oversight all of them at this moment in time. But yes, you're right; it's a very demanding job, and it started accidentally. Actually, it's because many years back. We decided to do a small magazine for our organisation at that time, which was MAPIT, M-A-P-I-T, which is Manchester's Aerial Phenomena Investigation Team. And as time's gone on, we changed to Anomalous Phenomena Investigation Team because we wanted to also incorporate the field and study of the paranormal. And it was generally created, a small one. It was only about 6 or 7 pages at first, just for the group. And a number of other groups throughout the UK got wind of this and asked if they could get a copy. So we started supplying those monthly bulletins in paperwork to different organisations across the country. But it just kept expanding. And of course, the UK didn't really have a large selection of magazines, shop shelf to purchase on the subject. And people were very interested, and it just kind of grown over the years. And then we decided one day to sit down and properly look at the magazine and create it as a proper magazine should look, and maybe distribute it. Now, how to get out there? We thought, well, okay, let's if we push this out digitally, then people from anywhere can read it, and they can obtain it for free. So we thought we'd just trial it, and that was 12 years back, I think, or something like that. So,
how many issues have come out?
The magazine's been going for 12 years, but what happened is that around about 5 or 6 years in, we completely stopped the magazine for about 6 months and redesigned it and started it again under a slightly different name. And it's been going ever since. And of course, it's expanded to the point with us getting into 12 countries now. And it's about distribution of that free information. It's not about the money. It's about the people that are putting the magazine together, completely dedicated to the job, love the work that they do, and like to provide something free of charge. Because like I say, it's hard to get good information out to the general public.
Now, you also have a TV channel.
We do. We have a series called Phenomena Project, which is still currently ongoing. We have a number of things being pictured at the end of February, and we are looking for the States for that to go out. We were over there, actually. I visited Atlantic City in March of last year, and I have to say it was very pleasant when we were there. The sun was out, Tim. But we went on from there to the Georgia Guidestones in Georgia and Livingston in Texas, doing some filming for the television shows, and it seems to be doing very well. We've got a full season of documentaries already available. We're currently working on the flagship, which is a 2-hour specialized documentary on the field and study of paranormal mechanics within the paranormal field.
So your television channel, I mean, is it available currently only in the UK?
The television channel's available. I mean, we also have ZoharStargate.com, which provides a lot of information. It's a specialized website. It's a little bit like, we sat back some time ago, I think it was about 18 months back, and myself and partners decided to come up with an idea of of launching a website, a little bit like a database, simply for the subjects of the UFO, the paranormal, supernatural, mind, body, spirit, etc. One place where you can find out everything. So if you put somebody's name in, you come up with their details, how to contact them, the books, the products, the services, events. We want it. It's an intelligently designed website, so it thinks and learns, and of course, it certainly took some time. We've been working with our good team of technicians in Russia. And that site's actually up at this moment in time. We have Stargate TV, which is a platform for people to listen and watch things on the subject. It's the entertainment side, but we also do specialized courses on the subject, and of course there's the Stellar database, which is ever growing. And we've just finished a very large production with Eric von Daniken in the UK for the 50th anniversary of Chariots of the Gods. So it seems to have done very well.
Excellent. Wow. 50 years from Chariot to the Gods?
50 years.
Wow. Oh my gosh! Well, you know, I was just, and I mentioned this, Tim, on the last show. I think the first time that I ran across the whole idea of, like the ancient extraterrestrials visiting Earth was probably in the book "The Morning of the Magicians."
Oh yes, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent book.
Which I think that came out before Chariot of the Gods.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, there were a couple other authors. There was W.R. Drake, who's some of his work we've kept in. Brinsley Laporte Trench, of course, who was a good buddy of mine. But I met Eric Van Daniken on his first tour of the United States, and then that must have been 1970 or 78, 48 years ago. My God, how time does distort. I'll tell you, but we're still active. We're still active and publishing. I'm semi-retired. I only do 2 or 3 books a month now. So
that's all.
We do keep we do. I keep you busy. I do keep you busy, and Sean Castile busy, and Bill Kern busy, and Carol busy, and everybody else that I can find who's willing to pick up a pen or know something about a computer to help out. And we do fabulous work. In fact, all of us here at the table do fabulous work, and we're going to continue after the break that's coming up, and we're going to delve into the subject of older guys. So there'll be a lot of cursing and a lot of spitting of pea soup coming up in a few minutes.
Now back to exploring the bizarre with 2 of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
All right, welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. I'm Tim Swartz, and I just want to remind our listeners that if you have any questions, we want to hear from you. Send them to us. Go to our chat room. Phone them in. I don't care what telepathy. We'll take it. We want to hear from you. Our guests want your questions, so don't be shy.
Send them with your local demons. Send them with your local demon.
No demons. I had a hell of a time getting the last one out of my house, so no demons. All right, Tim. Let's bring in our other guest, William J. Hall, and who Bill. Now, you wrote just a really fantastic book. It's one of my favorite books, The World's Most Haunted House.
Thanks.
And you lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut as a kid when all this was taking place. I mean, do you remember the news coverage? Because I guess that for a while, I mean, it was really big news there in Bridgeport.
It was very big news, and of course, back in those days, Dad controlled the TV, and you're in the living room. I was 10 when it happened, so I can't tell you that I remembered what I saw on TV, but I do remember it was all over the news, and of course, Dad was watching the news. I probably wanted to watch something else, And I remember asking him, Dad, is this really haunted and stuff? And he's like, man, no, it's a bunch of crap, And then life went on, And I didn't revisit it till many, many years later, So.
Well, now were you interested in the paranormal and the esoteric and all these weird things that that we got interested in when we were kids? I mean, was it like that with you, or were you a late bloomer?
No, I would say I was a very, very curious child. I saw a magician quite by accident at age 7 and decided that's what I wanted to do and learn. And so I became a magician. Ended up at one point, it was about half my income. I was doing hundreds of shows a year. I was very into the psychic and mind reading and those kind of illusions. I was fascinated by the psychology of magic and how you can recreate people's memories and twist people's perceptions and lead them down false trails, and all of that I think has ended up being very valuable. Later on, I was a member of the American Magicians Psychic Investigation Committee, and so was I a skeptic? Well, yes, but I was also very open-minded just to, all life's mysteries. I mean, we know there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I grew up with In Search Of and all that kind of things. And some things, of course, I was very mad about, false fortune telling, things like that got me very upset, which I'm not as upset now about just about anything. I think age does that to you, but you're kind of
mellows you out a bit.
Yeah, it mellows you out a bit, right. And I remember when performing, for many years, people would say, well, what do you think about Lindley Street? And I would be like, nah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't even bother looking into it. And I ended up, in exchange for advertising, writing column Magic and the Unknown for about 6 years in a few local newspapers. And that's when I was investigating things, trying to get as close to the original sources as possible and investigating different urban legends and things like that. And that's when I started coming across, and I was debunking a lot of things, and that's when I started coming across some things I was like, well, this is weird. That this one doesn't really have a clear end. This one seems like there's, some merit to it. And some of those later I found out didn't have merit to it, and some of those, of course, still have merit to it. Roswell was still an amazing story. We know something happened there. We may not know exactly what happened, but we know something happened. You can't say nothing happened. So as I went through that, I found, a lot of those things were puzzling, which led me to investigate things. Of course, I kind of followed the path of Houdini, not talent-wise, but I mean, but I followed kind of the path of Houdini, which was looking. I think Houdini may have discovered the paranormal if he wasn't going about it the way he did. Right. He was going to seances. He was going to the people who were famous at the time, and of course, you're going to get all the frauds when you do that.
Bill. Not to interrupt you, but I actually shared an office. I actually shared an office with the amazing Randy back in the 1970s, and he wanted me to manage his act or something like that. But I wasn't that much into magic, and I was more into the paranormal, and not so much in the hocus pocus. But I did, I think I bought a Scholastic book on Houdini maybe when I was, 10 years old or something like that. And always fascinated me. And we actually have, to this date, a couple of books on Houdini that we keep in print and on by, Walter Gibson, who was his press agent and ghostwriter. He was actually a believer. He took the a contradictory approach to this. He was very much a believer in all of this, the phenomena, but of course he couldn't reveal that because he was getting a paycheck from Houdini, So He wrote whatever Houdini's point of view. But anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought that it was a good sidebar there about yeah.
The difference between Houdini and Randy, and I love Randy. I really do, and I think he's done a lot of good. Randy, of course, is very, very close-minded as to absolutely nothing.
Oh boy,
nothing is. But I forgive him for that because he has done a lot to educate people and that kind of thing. Houdini was kind of, again, when I said I followed in that, Houdini was very open-minded. I mean, he really tried to find it. I mean, for 30 years, and out of a year, he basically devoted about a half a year to this stuff. So he really, he wasn't doing it just to debunk people. He wanted to find it. He really wanted, when he had the box with the pencil and the pad and said if somebody could move it and write a message, and he had agreed upon codes and messages with friends. So he says, when I die, I'm going to try to say this to you. And, he really wanted to try everything he could to discover whether it's real. And he never said it wasn't. But what he did say is, I've tried for 30 years. I haven't been able to find it. I do know that I have been almost fooled. And if I could be almost fooled, just imagine how easy it is for somebody who's untrained. Now, again, like I said, the sad part in reading of all of Houdini's things is after I became involved in researching this stuff, I realized that, as you guys know, it's painful. It takes a lot of time. You get a lot of dead ends. It's boring. And if you're a skeptic and want a quick answer, you're probably not going to get it. You got to
absolutely
spend a
not.
lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's kind of like if you're looking for unicorn. After a certain amount of hours, you're going to be like, guys, I really just want to drop that. I don't.
Tell us about this the case in Bridgeport, which Paulina writes about in our forthcoming book. Why do you consider that to be the most haunted house, and what exactly went on there?
Sure. That wasn't my original title. As you know, the publishers choose the book title. But the reason that they that they chose it as a title and we discussed it is they said, look, this is as far as what's the world's most haunted house. Who knows? But that this case embodied fascinating elements, and those elements were documentation like we've never seen before, at least in modern times. When you go back to Blair Witch and so, once you go back to the 1800s, it's not that it's invalid, but of course things become tougher to research and get closer to original sources and interviews and that kind of thing. Here we had documentation, both over 250 incident sheets diagramming each incident, so it was very well documented, as well as 40 hours of interviews. So we had this was as Ed Warren rightfully put it, the most witnessed haunting in the last at least 100 years. When you have 68 or 70 witnesses, and 9 or 10 hours of interviews are with the Bridgeport Police Department, and then you had the Bridgeport Fire Department, then you had reporters, you had priests, you had onlookers, family, extended family.
Wasn't there even a talking cat?
Yeah, there was. That was part of the mythology of it. I certainly don't believe that the cat talked. However, there was audio phenomena, and it got associated with the cat. So I think that's really, what happened there. Because there was footsteps and talking and knocks on the door, and those kind of poltergeist or haunting phenomena. And if there's voices from the basement and the only thing down there is a cat, of course, the cat gets blamed. So but yeah, as Paul said, it was very, it was something you would never forget, with reporters putting microphones up to the cat. But yeah, I mean, to me, the Lindley Street haunting, the Lindley Street haunting really got me much deeper into the paranormal, from the poltergeist and haunted house phenomena, because to me that was better proof than if I saw it myself. If I saw it myself,
okay. You say you were only 10 years old when it actually all was happening. How long did the phenomena go on, and how in God's name did you get attached to it? And at what point, when you were 12 or what? I mean, how did that all come about?
Right. No, it was only in, I think, 2012, 2013 that I became involved in it. Throughout the years, of course, I heard about it. People talked about it. I do magic shows occasionally. Somebody would ask me about Amityville Horror. They'd ask me about Lindley Street, and sometimes I knew some stuff about what they're asking about. Sometimes I didn't, depending on how I felt. In Lindley Street, I really had never looked into it, even though I was writing these columns. It was just one of the things I forgot about. And somebody actually did a post in Facebook in one of these community pages, and I grew up in Bridgeport, so I was, a member of the community page for some of the Bridgeport groups. And they posted a picture of the house, and they said, "Does anybody remember the haunting on Lindley Street?" And it occurred to me, I'm like, with all the stuff I've looked into, investigated, researched, this was something happened in my hometown. I never really looked into Lindley Street. I just always assumed it was, a hoax or no big deal. Didn't know the story. And part of the reason I didn't know the full story is it happened when I was so young. I mean, people talked about it, but, I wasn't really, I wasn't focused on that, even though I was looking into other things like the Black Dog of Meriden Mountain in Connecticut, and some of the other local things I did do articles on. Just happened to not do one on Lindley Street. Don't know why. Just one of those things I missed. And so I saw that post, and I said, I wonder what did happen there. Because I don't really know, hoax or not. I didn't know the story, so I started Googling. And I find that there's these newspaper articles from all around the country. And I'm like, holy crap, there's a lot of stuff here. And I was reading the quotes from police officers, and I'm like, God, you got multiple police officers saying a refrigerator floated. Now, I know you can't believe everything you read in the newspaper, but one thing I do know is there was enough names and enough quotes, and, the quality and quantity of witnesses, to me, spelled one thing. This warranted further inquiry. This was worthy of digging deeper to find out what happened. Even if it was a hoax, it was a fascinating phenomena, regardless of what it was. So I wrote down all the names I was finding in the newspapers, and I tried to look up the people and call them. And, of course, many were no longer with us. And I ended up reaching retired police officer Joseph Tomic to talk to him about Lindley Street. And after interrogating me like he's back on the job, he ended up telling me, he says, "Oh God, it was real." And he told me stuff that he didn't tell the newspapers. And, he went into it, and he said, we were forced to be interviewed. I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, the Bridgeport Police Department, they set up a conference room, and they pulled us off the beat, and they forced us to be interviewed." And I thought, well, that's weird. Why would you say something's a hoax and then force all these police officers to be interviewed? And he said, if you can find the guys who did that, you might find out what happened on Lindley Street, the whole story. Because, of course, he only knew the story from what he saw from the time he was there. And I went to the library and kept going into microfilms and looked up every single article I could, because some of them I couldn't find online. And I ended up finding the name of Boyce Beatty, who was one of the investigators briefly mentioned, and this was after it was, called a hoax. And I found him, and he was still living in the same town as 1974 when it happened. And I talked to him, and I said, Boyce, Officer Joe Tomek said there was these guys who did interviews in a conference room, and they forced them, and blah, blah, blah. And Boyce is like, yeah, that was us. And I said, and Joe said there was tons of papers and cassettes and, everything. And he says, that was us. And I said, do you have access to these interviews? And he said, well, I think so. They're in a box in my basement. So I went over his house and left with 22 cassette tapes filled to the brim on both sides, and an 8-hour reel-to-reel from the Bridgeport Police Department, 30 hours of interviews in all. And then I did another 10 interviews. And for the first time, the story was able to be told, because these interviews were done after it was declared a hoax. The police department interviews were done with explicit agreement that they would not be made public. The family did the interviews because they wanted help, and they had the same agreement. We'd love to have you help us, but we don't want it to be public. And so none of these interviews went public at all. They lay dormant since 1974, and I was lucky to come upon this gold mine of the documentation of the Bridgeport Poltergeist case, which was an incredibly documented case, from 250 incident sheets and 30 hours of interviews from many, and the interviews were done like right when it happened. So these, it wasn't like they were many years later. Of course, I did some follow-ups and tried to do some interviews, second interviews with people who are still around, and of course finding new witnesses thanks to Facebook and people connected in some way.
Were there people that you interviewed that were members of the household? People that were actually residing there.
Well, no, the mother and father, Jerry and Laura, they died in the 90s, but I had hours of them on tape. So it was really weird, because you'd listen to the family, and by the end of it, you felt like you knew them. But they had died in the 90s. But I did speak to family members. There was spouses and children of people involved, because of course these police officers went home and they talked about it around the kitchen table, and the superintendent, who was dating his daughter, and what was the family saying, and what were the spouses and children of the firefighters. So this thing there was so many witnesses that as they left, their friends and family, etc., heard the story. So there was just so many witnesses that expanded from there that had some sort of connection, and I ended up getting to the point of over 130 of people who had some part in the story, but even just first-hand witnesses, we're talking about 70, 80 first-hand witnesses. It was not the typical poltergeist story. Not that the others aren't true necessarily, but how often do you get something that happens, right in the middle of the city that that became so big? So,
any interest in the making a movie? Has anybody expressed any interest in doing a documentary or a movie on this?
It was being shopped, but no luck yet. But sad but true is, with Hollywood, sometimes I think they don't care about how valid it is versus
that's true. But you've got a lot of selling points here too, and you notice all these movies are say based on a true story when they're not. The house doesn't even exist based on a true story. Go ahead, Tim. I didn't mean to.
Well, I was just going to ask. At the peak of all of this, it got so bad, didn't it, that the street was filled with onlookers, and people were just like walking into the house. They were not knocking on the door or anything. They would just come into sight.
Yeah. Absolutely. It was so bizarre because there's so many. There was 13. When you think about it, think about this, 13 firemen and multiple trucks and multiple police cars, And these people were going in the house and coming out with these stories. And very soon, obviously, social media not needed, old school word of mouth. I mean, this thing spread like wildfire, and the news media got caught up on it. And, the same day, there was over 2,000 people outside the house, up and down the street, because police and fire department and priests and reporters, people kept coming out of the house without an explanation. And the more and more this went on, we don't know what's going on, the more people came. And then the next day they had to barricade off the road and get the police wagons and dogs down there and police patrol over the house for, days after that. I mean, it was absolutely bizarre. It was something that you just don't see much.
And we're not talking about a big house either. It was a tiny place.
Very tiny bungalow, 768 square feet, and there's tiny little hole in the wall right in the middle of the city near. It wasn't one of these Victorians out in the woods where you got a butler and a spiral staircase. I mean, it looked like it didn't even qualify to be a haunted house by people's perceptions. And it was a tiny little place, and a very unusual, and at the height of it for those few days, extremely active poltergeist case, because you had police officers in every room, which there's only really 3 rooms.
Okay, now besides the
we're going to have to interrupt both of you here because we're coming up on our break. It always just as we get rolling, then we have to go.
There you go.
All right. Well, we'll continue this conversation and more on Exploring the Bizarre. So please stay tuned for more.
Exploring the Bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. Here we are in the second hour, and glad to have you back. So now, Steve, I want to bring you back into the conversation. We've been talking about poltergeist and poltergeist hauntings, and I kind of chafe almost on that word haunting and association with poltergeist, because a poltergeist is different than, say, like a ghost or what we would think of as a traditional haunting, isn't it?
Well, initially, parapsychology research would indicate that poltergeist phenomena is a product from a focus or catalyst, usually more female than male, usually between the ages of 9 and 14, most prominent. And if you remove the focus, you tend to remove the phenomena. It seems to be more like haunted people as opposed to haunted homes. The disturbances are usually short-lived, certainly more responsive, demonstrative, unlike hauntings, which seem to be rather timid and lurk in the darkness and things that go bump in the night. So, of course, we've followed that path for many years, but it isn't written in stone. I did some research a number of years ago, which indicated a small percentage of poltergeist infestations were seen to take place and reported whilst the focus or assumed focus was not in the building or wasn't even in the location. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because it falls pretty much in line with the case that we did in Seattle, because we had a poltergeist type disturbances as well as haunting, and no focus associated. So that was something that was certainly interesting.
Well, that's interesting that you would bring up that point because, like you, I mean, I grew up with that whole idea that a poltergeist is probably, like some kind of, split off from a young person's personality, like getting, I suppose, is an outlet for some kind of rage. The thing about a poltergeist, though, is that it's very energetic. I mean, it's as Bill was talking about. I mean, they're able to levitate heavy pieces of furniture, tear doors off of hinges, have all kinds of just really bizarre and powerful manifestations. But when it comes to, say, like a PK ability in people, I mean, I think of the and I can't remember her name, the Russian woman that there's a lot of. Yes. Yeah. With the interesting film, and I mean, with a lot of really sweaty concentration, she was able to make matchsticks move across the table, and like a ball and some scissors levitate. Nothing though like what we've seen in a lot of these places where there's like a very energetic poltergeist taking place. So I mean, what's the difference here? I mean, of course, yeah, that's $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, how come a poltergeist can become so powerful, yet if we're blaming it on a person, any kind of investigation that's been done is not so powerful.
Well, yeah, I mean, we assume it's unconscious forms of PK. That was what we were initially taught. It was initially what I was taught back in education in the subject of the paranormal, and it was pretty much a rule of thumb. However, as time goes on and you spend so much time in the field, you quickly learn that true poltergeist infestations are extremely rare compared to the tales of haunted houses. I've only investigated 5 in 34 years, and I've roughly done about 1,000 cases. So it shows to me that true poltergeist disturbances, if they do take place, then they are very sporadic. They don't last very long. They peak to a point of activity and then diminish quite quickly. However, there has been a couple of cases when the phenomena has returned, and it seems to have returned at the same capacity as it did when it left at peak value. So it's interesting to say that we do believe that it's possibly some form of intelligence. There's certainly just demonstrative of that. However, not necessarily enough information to suggest that they are of a spirit, similar to what people refer to as hauntings.
Mm-hmm. It seems like that when you're dealing with with poltergeist phenomena, a lot of times it starts out small, wrappings, little things moving around, and then it's almost like it grows, like it starts to develop an intelligence. And
that's exactly it, Tim. I mean,
yes.
When you look into this phenomenon deeply enough. And I wrote about this in one of my books in regards to the paranormal investigation, is that there is a pattern. There is a rule book, believe it or not, for poltergeist disturbances. It starts off with audible phenomena, disturbances, those sort of things, bangs, scratches, those sorts of things. It then progresses to sort of a stage 2, which is it incorporates object manipulation, movement, stacking, rearranging, disappearing, and things like that. Then it goes into the apparitional stage. Now, when you say apparitional stage, poltergeist apparitions tend to be more really reported as amorphous shapes, lights, those sort of things, but definitely forms of maybe apparitions, onto physical interactions, and then even into what we might refer to as a psychological and physiological attacks. And of course, we start heading into the incubus type incidents then. So, and start stepping into the demological sections, if you really want to go further into that field. But there's definitely a pattern. And we found that just as there are patterns within hauntings, be it locational hauntings or translocational hauntings, things that don't have a connection to the location, residual phenomena, there seems to be a pattern within the poltergeist infestations as well. Well, there is what I refer to as kind of a rule book. It seems that they tend to fall under the same paranormal mechanics. And this is what we tend to do. Rather than looking at the full picture of the paranormal, because the paranormal is just a word, it encompasses so much stuff, to try and study the phenomena a little bit more in depth is to look at it in pieces. And this is what we've been doing. We've been looking at it as what we refer to as paranormal mechanics. It's like the small pieces of the puzzle. How does things certainly happen? And then basically to build a bigger picture. So we're kind of doing it in a reverse role, which seems to be working. So maybe it's just the method of how we investigate maybe needs to alter very slightly.
I was always interested in the part of a poltergeist phenomena where it becomes responsive to what people are saying or thinking, in the house that the activity is taking place. I know there was one case, I can't remember offhand what it was now, where the an armchair investigator had come in and had made kind of a flip remark that he thought that he'd heard that the poltergeist liked tearing up photographs, even though that really is not one of the things that poltergeists generally do. And then almost as soon as he left, household photographs started getting torn up.
Yeah.
It's like standing around listening to what people absolutely are saying or thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, they love to do things like that, especially move items of importance. Now, they're very resourceful. That's one thing that you will learn from poltergeist infestations. They are extremely resourceful. Everything that they do requires attention. So it's not wasted. They don't have any wasted action. So if they are going to do something, they want to make sure that it is notable. Things like moving car keys, important documents, things that you will notice immediately have disappeared. They tend to grab the witness's attention, of course, in some cases, creates vexation, which we believe maybe poltergeist phenomena utilizes to create the next event. And that's been incidents of manifestations. Water manifestations are the most common in poltergeist disturbances, but they are notable to disappear before the next action takes place. So you could say maybe they're using the resources to utilize the energies to create manifestations and then maybe use this again to create the next one. So it seems like a stepping stone effect.
Yeah, it also when a poltergeist gets to its peak, so to speak, and I mean, it gets to the point where it's actually like talking and conversing with people, that they almost seem to be unhinged, so to speak. It's like almost like you're dealing with a personality that's just not quite all there. If you understand what I'm saying, like it has a mental disturbance almost. Well, I mean, especially the way that they do certain kinds of tricks or activities and damaging things. It's almost like you're dealing with a child that has brain damage.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the most common traits within poltergeist infestations. However, I mean, there tends to be in the textbooks a clear divide still between the subjects of hauntings and poltergeist. But I don't think there is as much a divide as we initially think. I think it's just because it's a rarity to see such cases where there is the phenomenon of an infestation taking place in a building where there's a haunting and a combination phenomena, which doesn't often get reported, but occasionally those things do happen.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that before. A place that has actually ghost activity and poltergeist.
Absolutely, and this is what we seem to have been faced with in Seattle. Initially, we thought it was a hoax. And then we were surprised to think that, well, okay, there's some of the stuff that was going on initially was maybe related to a haunting, some type of imprinted on the land or the house itself. But then there were the phenomena rung bells of an infestation, a poltergeist infestation. Some of the things that were happening were typical of poltergeist infestations. Yet there was only one gentleman living there in his 40s, and psychological assessment drew him out that he could not have been and should not have been the focus. And in fact, phenomena did take place in his home whilst he was out. So that kind of led us to believe that was probably a more haunting case, but with infestation type activity, which was a bit. It certainly was a combination.
Well, what kind of activity was taking place there? I mean, poltergeist-wise.
Well, of course, I mean, poltergeist type disturbances there were objects manipulation was one of the main ones. Items would suddenly just manifest themselves, fly through the air, bury themselves into the wall with tremendous force. That was spontaneous combustions of items, direct voice phenomena. There was a lot of things that indicated a poltergeist disturbance. Being woke up at night, the shaking of a bed, those normal disturbances that causes havoc with resting, which again causes more vexation. And yet, at the same time, there seems to have been a footprint of activity around the building as well, which indicated a haunting. So it was certainly a tricky investigation.
Wow, I guess. And I would think that any ghost worth its sheet would be scared to death of a poltergeist and would just want to try to get out of there as quickly as they could.
Well, the gentleman in question's moved now.
And did the phenomena move with him?
No, it did, which is interesting. So, and maybe the house still remains very much active.
We have cases where not only did the phenomena follow the individuals involved, but even continued to harass them while they were on the highway. I mean, just mysterious, dogs with bloodshot red eyes would appear in the back seat, and trucks that would be floating above the pavement would be following them, and I mean just all kinds of weird phenomena that seemed to once they were attracted to this, or the phenomena was attracted to them. Nothing seemed to be out of bounds. I mean, it's just remarkable some of the things that we describe in this Amityville and Beyond book, which puts it out of the realm of just it's Satan's little helpers. Now, what would you say a poltergeist really is? I mean, are there demons in your opinion? I mean, are we fighting the devil? Do we need to have a cross and some holy water with us at all points?
Well, that certainly depends on whose information you read, Tim, to be honest with you. I mean, there's lots of speculation around, and it's massively varied. I mean, if you want to go for the sort of the more biblical side of things, it will say that they could be fallen angels, that they were never they would never been human, they're not human spirits. And there are other references to suggest that there's some type of intelligent inner energy, that we create these entities ourselves. Some say that they're born as of energy, and they are attracted to certain individuals like moths to a light. Some of them suggest that they're demonic in nature. There's just so many different varied opinions regarding what poltergeists are.
Bill, how do you look at poltergeists? I mean, Paul Eno talks about them being parasites and not demons, right, in the sense that they're coming from the spores of Satan, or from the from hell. I mean, to me that seems so simplified. I mean, the whole. Well, of course, I'm not.
I take a scientific view at it, and I agree with everything my English compeer is saying. I believe that it revolves around frequency, and the subject of the poltergeist, what they used to call the agent, is sending out a particular frequency. We know that there's other elements involved, perhaps, that has to do with the land, or where the house is, that may contribute. Obviously, we don't know all of the elements, and we know that every preteen or teen that has a disturbance doesn't result in a poltergeist. So obviously we know that there's some missing components that we don't quite understand. But that frequency appears to, this is what it seems like, it seems to call them, and they seem to feed on that. And there seems to be this kind of negative relationship between the frustrated or, the issues that the person is having, as well as what the parasite gets out of it. That's at least the way it appears. I mean, like, for example, in the Lindley Street case, I don't believe all of these activities are caused by the quote unquote parasite. So, for example, if a model boat moves 4 inches to the left, is that the poltergeist doing it, or perhaps that is the result of, as Paul would say, parallel world intersect, which again, is a far out theory also. Well, they're all far out theories, but we're dealing with things that are far out. But in other words, there's an environmental change with electromagnetic energy, so that the parasite or poltergeist may not be making the refrigerator float. However, it might be picking up the girl and throwing her across the room. You know what I mean? So there's some things that do appear negative and intentional and directed, as we kind of said before, they're good at poking you and hitting your sore spots, that kind of intelligence. And then there's other times that some of the activity might be just due to a difference in the environment caused by this kind of.
Now, isn't it possible? Isn't it possible that several things might be going on? Like John Keel, who of course was a good friend of mine, he talked about these, window areas, which were kind of like, vortexes to other dimensions and all. And once it's opened up, there could be more than one sort of phenomena going on there. I mean, it could be a lot of different things attracting itself, all at the same time and feeding off of each other.
Right, and I think that's why you get a circumstance where you have a haunting and a poltergeist, because if you have a flap area or portal or whatever you want to call it, then it would depend on the people and what comes. I mean, all sorts of stuff can come through, either curious or peaking or, but if you're sending out the right frequency, you can attract that kind of parasite, so to speak, whether it's a poltergeist or whether it's the adult version of a poltergeist, which we would just call the parasite, for lack of better words. Maybe they're different, levels of.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that there's been a number of cases of people who have had UFO experiences, either just, seeing, something strange in the sky or landing in their backyard, or even to a point where they're seeing occupants will then have, at least for a little while, poltergeist activity in their house.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they're all in the same bus. They're all in the same bus. They don't necessarily know each other, but I think the mode of transportation is the same, to your point. Same thing with, in Lindley Street, other houses were affected with different paranormal activity. Not the same, not as intense, but I do think they're all, and I think that's probably one of the biggest advancements that has been made in the paranormal is we used to look at all this stuff in silos. Bigfoot people can't talk to the UFO people because they hate each other, and
Right.
But now we're realizing, what I mean. But now we're realizing that all this phenomena perhaps is related in some way that has to do with these portals or frequency or energy, whatever you want to call it. For a lot of these terms have baggage associated with them, which we could like or not like, but I think they're on the same bus. They may not know each other, but I think the mode of transportation and how they get here and come and go or whatever, they would be for different reasons. But I think the modality or the kind of the secrets to them might be somewhat similar, even if they're coming from completely different places.
I completely agree with that. I believe that it would seem to a multidimensional, metaphysical type of phenomena, which is attributed to all sorts of things, be it UFOs or the paranormal.
Yeah, and we even have cryptids now coming into the mix. We've got Paul out there at the Pennsylvania Triangle, and UFOs are hovering over the trees, and there's a Bigfoot or some kind of creature hanging out in the underbrush. And Paul Butch just sent me a couple of reports where hunters are encountering all kinds of paranormal phenomena. And they're seeing these dogmen are very popular at the moment. They almost seem to have replaced Bigfoot as far as cryptids go these days.
Fascinating.
Yeah, all right. Gentlemen, we have to go to our break here. We have to go to our break. We'll be right back with more on Exploring the Bizarre.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre, and tonight we are talking about noisy spirits with Steve Mera and Bill J. Hall. And gentlemen, we have a question from our chat room from DCook73, and he wants to know, Poltergeist could also be jinns, possibly, shapeshifters or other kinds of elementals. And so, both of you, if you want to chime in on this question, be my guest.
Okay, Bill, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're welcome to go first. I'll see.
Somebody go first.
Okay. I mean, what I can say is I've talked in depth about this with Rosemary Ellen Gouley. Obviously, she studies a particular subject of the jinns and shapeshifters and accounts and reports of those type of phenomena. And it does seem that there seems a combination of definite poltergeist infestation type experiences during those encounters. There may be different references. Some of them would be jinns. I mean, depending on which country you'd go to, which culture, what spiritual beliefs that they have. But sure, yeah, they could be referred to as jinns. It's very diverse. Like I mentioned, there is a dividing opinions what poltergeists really are. What should we reference them? Different cultures have probably called them different things. The old hag was another old reference name, which might more be associated to sleep deprivational experiences and stuff. But nevertheless, though, there does seem to be some very interesting incidents reported.
All right, Bill.
I mean, I would have to agree that we've called these things different names, and to me, I like to kind of frame it up by when some like when I say to people, well, in these cases they were definitely a poltergeist. But then the question is, what is a poltergeist? Well, I think even if we can't answer the ultimate answer of exactly who are they, they're not Fred, they like peanut butter, whatever. But we could say, or we could classify them by their behavior. And so I think as we divide these things into different, for lack of a better word, species, it's good to classify them by their behavior. And definitely different cultures will name them differently. And then aside from the name, you have to look at what's written about them and those kind of indicators and see, do they have those same components that leads to a poltergeist? And in some cases, they may describe multiple phenomena, but maybe all call it the same thing, demons, for example, or something else. But yeah, I like to think of them as classifying them by the behavior and try to distinguish between those groups of different behavior to label them in some way.
That's a good point with both of you, because it makes me think about the old beliefs of household spirits, or like the spirit of the hearth. And if you displeased it or forgot to put out its bowl of milk, it would respond with poltergeist type of activity. I mean, even going as far, I remember one case where the people for quite a while would find their loaves of bread hollowed out. They'd cut into them, and it was like something had eaten it from the inside out. But then, as soon as they went back to leaving its bowl of milk or whatever, it was appeased. And so I wonder if anybody's ever thought about trying that in a poltergeist house, just leaving out a bowl of milk for it.
Hey, I would be amiss if I didn't ask your opinion on Jeff the Talking Mongoose. I am actually a member of a group on Facebook who are fans of the mongoose, Talking Mongoose. And I think, Tim, you wrote a chapter for the Amityville and Beyond book about other cases that involved the animals that are said to communicate or speak.
Well, the chapter was about talking poltergeist, but I did include Jeff in a section. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us just a little bit about Jeff? Because most people, or some people, may not be too familiar with him.
Oh well, I think that I think we should have our guests give their opinions on him. The took place back in the late 1920s into the early 1930s on the Isle of Man, in an isolated farmhouse, just the Irving family. It's a man, his wife, and their 12-year-old daughter. And all of a sudden, they had a voice that claimed that it was a mongoose that was a couple of 100 years old. And I think Jeff said that he was an extra special little mongoose.
No, I do find those things really fascinating. I always look at the evidence, of course, but nevertheless, though, there has been similar reports. There was one where the poltergeist, the shed poltergeist, and people go into a small shed. It was a family house, and they heard a voice coming from the shed talking to the little girl that was in the garden one day. And they opened the shed, only a small shed. Opened the door, nobody in there. And this got so popular that neighbours and people travelling from near and far would come to ask specific questions to this voice in the shed, and it would answer them. And it had an amazing knowledge of things that it shouldn't have known, and also included on a couple of occasions details about partners who were cheating on their spouses, which was really interesting, apparently.
It was very much like the Bell Witch in the way that it talked and was able to reveal the secrets of everybody around it. Plus, I guess it had a lovely singing voice. It would sing hymns and popular songs of the time and stuff.
It seemed to be definitely connected with what's going on in their environment and the year and stuff. And vocal responses has been the study of many paranormal cases over the years. I'd like to I'll share a little thing with you from our flagship documentary, which is going out sometime this year, is the 2-hour one. There's some interesting experiments that was been able to be conducted under these conditions. What tend to people do is when they are met with poltergeist or paranormal disturbances, they're very focused on the phenomena and don't often get the opportunity or the thought to conduct certain tests. Grab the opportunity whilst it's there. But because we were in a location which was replicatable phenomena, which was soon to be taking place, a number of series of tests were conducted. And one of those was started off with vocal communications, what generally people will refer to as EVPs. But in the 34 years I've worked in the field, I've heard many EVPs, but these were unprecedented. These were beyond what I would ever refer to as an EVP. In fact, we sent a recorded one off to a gentleman, a specialist in Canada. And he wrote back, he said he couldn't hear it because there was one of our investigators talking. And then we had to tell him that no, the actual guy that's talking is the EVP.
Wow.
And he just wouldn't accept it. They were unprecedented, the responses what we got in Seattle, which left us to be able to do a number of tests. And what we found was, and we share this, so it's all video documented, the experiments during the documentary. We found that conducting tests such as 3 digital recorders, all identical make and model, the Olympus, made by Olympus, which are our sponsors, so we know about how the equipment operates, all running for 10 seconds simultaneously in a silent environment and asking a question. And what was really interesting is getting 3 different responses on each device. Now, that would refer to it that we were dealing with something that isn't harmonic, that it's transplacement, it's transplacing directly to the equipment, that they have the capabilities of targeting a piece of equipment and placing something on it. In fact, what we had is we had a female voice on the first one, a male voice on the second saying something completely different, and pops and clicks, strange, unusual sounds on the third one. But we should have had nothing. I mean, and what was really interesting during these recordings is that the hush in the background disappeared and to allow the voice to come through, which was very, very good. Now we have to also ask the question then, is that when people say that they've heard something and other people say, well, I didn't hear it, do they have the capabilities of transplacement to the human ear? It would seem to be from some of the evidence that we've done obtained from test procedures, because we have had direct voice phenomena taking place and other people not hear it, that maybe people are targeted just as equipment are. We did some further studies in these cochlear devices, which are now implants which fasten onto the head, and for people which have not been able to hear, allows them to hear. And of course, maybe it's a very similar process, because what we do know is that using these cochlear devices, which is the inner part of the ear, to allow people that are deaf to be able to hear normal patterns of noise, is that the method of it is it's not using the eardrum. So it's not required to be harmonic. And even though that we got to the point of being able to ask questions and gain answers to the questions we gave, some of the responses were very interesting. On 2 occasions, apparently we were recorded a voice that said they wasn't even where we were. They were somewhere else. So we cannot, if that is the case, then we simply cannot even come to the conclusion that just because someone picks up an EVP in a building, that references that building to be haunted. So it really does throw the theories and physics out the window.
I would love to have, like sound analysis done on that voice recording, because it makes me think of the results that came back a couple of years ago of the Poltergeist knockings that were recorded.
Right, you're absolutely right. They sounded human vocals, but looking at it, they didn't register it as.
Really?
They're not registered as human vocals.
I found the same thing happening with recordings. That sometimes things, that the things that you heard on the recording is missing and they come back. So, I mean, I think it's very possible that there's that kind of manipulation going on. I know in my second book, with the Haunted House Diaries, where this was an active case in a flap area, and luckily not negative, really. So that, the family grew up with the stuff and just thought it was the way the world was, until the woman of the house started having sleepovers and realizing everybody's house wasn't that way. But we were asking questions and getting answers, and the person said their name, and I would ask everything 2-3 times to make sure, we weren't hearing, garbage or whatever. And the answer ended up being, when I got the house records, one of the guys that was the brother of the guy, William Wilcox, who bought the land in Connecticut, and helped build the house. So it was very bizarre. And, there's multiple people there, and we're like, holy crap, Of course, I didn't record it because we didn't expect to get anything, because they're getting static for the longest time until that happened. So, but yeah, it's weird. Some of the recordings, stuff disappears, comes back. I've seen things like that. So, and definitely we hear about it all the time, where some people heard things on the spot, and other people did not. So
it would seem
that
to
does
be
happen, and it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it would seem to fall under the same pattern. I mean, there's definitely some audible manipulation going on. I mean, even when we had a light that fell off from the upstairs landing hallway to the ground, we had our parabolic recording systems all running throughout the whole house, and those things will hear a pin drop at 30 meters, and it picked it up very clearly. Our replication, which we did, showed 38 decibels, exactly the same pattern from the original recording, except the original recording was 69 decibels. So it would seem that the actual incident amplified the sound.
Hey, Steve, have you found that there are any differences at all between poltergeists or hauntings in America and the UK? Is there anything unique that might be about one?
I haven't noticed any significant differences. I mean, it's all down to interpretation. Sometimes things are wrongly interpreted. Initially, when we went into this building, we thought it was a hoax. It had a lot of media coverage, and some things were quite unbelievable to believe. However, as things unfolded, and we had to stay there. I mean, we had a TV crew that from a television show that went in there, unfortunately, but they were only there. We worked out that we were told they were only there for 4 hours, between 4 and 6 hours, and they said they didn't really get anything. But we were there for just 2.5 weeks, and sometimes you really do have to, because there's one thing that I think a lot of investigators just don't think about is the fact is that it's a matter of cooperation. I believe whatever is there, you've got to rely on that cooperation, and if you don't get that, it doesn't make that there's no activity taking place, it just means that you didn't receive it. I didn't expect to get it, and as time went on, after the third day, we changed our process simply because of one recording. We went completely infrared, as we normally would do, and we got one particular recording, it was an Irish voice as well, and we didn't understand why we're getting Irish voices in Seattle. But we did some research and found out that there were a lot of Irish settlers there at that time, back again in the days of Native Americans and logging and so on and so forth. There were skirmishes and battles and quite a number of deaths. So that might have been associatable. But we didn't know that at the time. And the clear vocal recording said, "It hurts us. We don't like it." And we were trying to refer to, what are they actually talking about? And it seemed to be the infrared, which we were using. So we changed our methodology of investigation 3 days in, and that just made a hell of a difference. I mean, straight away, 10 minutes after we turned everything off and changed the process of investigation, phenomena just seemed to flood in.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's
I mean, some of the responses, Bill, were incredible. Some of the responses. When you get the question, what we were told, when we ask the questions, why don't we get long conversations from them? The response was something on the lines of they have to utilize pockets of energy. So the short and sweet answers. Again, there are also things that won't be told, that we cannot be told for one reason or another, or they just will not answer. But sometimes they're very cryptic. We asked a question, do you sleep? And the response was, when I get time. Now, it's almost comical, but some of the answers lead into hundreds of other answers. We asked the question, does everybody go to a heaven? Though that they don't call it that, apparently. The response was, for those that make it. Now, that's it opens up 1,000 other questions, but something intelligent, something clearly identifiable was responding to the questions we were giving, which is just phenomenal.
Well,
but yet the answers are rather whimsical, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't know the sincerity. That's one thing. We will never know the sincerity. People will say, "Oh, you're talking to a demon," or it's a ghost, or whatever. But we will never know the sincerity behind the voices that are responding and the truth to them. But there does seem to be a pattern of recordings that tend to say the same things from different vocal responses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I completely agree.
Go ahead.
Just say something quick. I mean, one of Paul's, I think it's Paul's next book, actually, Paulino, but which is a fascinating subject, which ties into this, which is what do spirits say about God or whatever. And part of it is you get all different answers. You get the atheist, you get the you get the person who thinks they're going to cross over. It's almost like they have the same beliefs that we have in life. So are they dead, or are they actually not dead but spirits in a different dimension? Do they not know any more than we do? Are they making up stuff? All these things play into into my thoughts as far as a laundry list of what could be going on, and it's a fascinating thing to ponder on and gather evidence on.
It really is, and I think it seems to be that there's a divide between the type of responses that you get, because some would seem to be more responsive and know more, some are lesser, as if there were different levels of knowledge and intelligence responses. Some of the amazing, some of the responses would suggest that they even know at least into the at least 18 months into the future, because we've been told on 2 occasions 2 random things which came to be, and that surely cannot be by coincidence. And we have really tried to press hard into gaining answers, which trying to find a pattern, to what really goes on after death. And of course, though they are very cryptic, some of these responses, some of them are slightly varied, but it seems to be a general belief from the communications that we have that they are not dead, that they never died, that they're still very much alive.
I hate to put a halt to this, but the show will be coming to an end in a few minutes, and I did want to give both of our guests the opportunity to tell people where they can be reached, what their internet sites are, titles of the book, and so forth. Let's start with you, Bill. Where can people find out about your activity?
You can go to William J. Hall, Hall, author.com, and you can contact me there. Also, my books are available there and some free stuff, and hopefully you like the site. So that makes it easy for me.
Are you looking for cases? Are you looking for cases?
Oh, yes, always, yes.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. Yeah, and Steve, you're there in the UK. We know about Phenomena magazine. How do people get a free subscription?
It's quite simply, Bill. They just go onto the website. It's all there to download. It's available every month, and all the back issues are available for free. phenomenamagazine.co.uk. You can also obtain my details from zoharstargate.com. There's a lot of information about some of the things that we do there. And of course, we're always looking for material for the magazines. It'd be great we'd also have the opportunity to feature some details about Bill's books, and I'll certainly catch up with Bill at some time and have a chat about that. That should be good.
Oh, excellent material, and so do you, Steve. And your books, where are they available from, Steve? How can people get a hold of a copy of your books on the Poltergeist and other related phenomena?
Well, Strange Happenings is available at blurb.com. And also you can obtain Rochdale Poltergeist case, which we had water manifestations analysed by a laboratory. It was a fascinating case. And the House of Fire and Whispers, which was the recent case from Seattle. They're all available through Amazon as audiobook and as standard book as well. And
Tim, where can people get your books?
Well, the same place that they can get yours, Tim. I mean, probably the best way is to go to Amazon.com and type in Tim Swartz, Tim Beckley. And
also too, we're still giving out free subscriptions to conspiracyjournal.com. And we have, of course, a printed newsletter and catalog, and we're very active, probably more so than anybody else. And so it's been a great show with great guests, great conversation. And next week we'll have another very interesting program on the paranormal. And we invite people, of course, to tell their friends and go to our YouTube channel for the archives. which is Mr. UFO's Secret Files. We've got over 140 shows up there now, thanks to Peter, who keeps everything very much up to date. And so thank you, Tina. Thank you, Carol. Thank you to our two guests, and thank you, Tim Schwartz there in Indiana. And good night, and God bless you all, including the demons.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.